She had always believed she was a woman of reason. Layla Mendez prided herself on staying calm, on measuring her words, on never letting her emotions get the better of her. But that Tuesday morning shattered every version of herself she had ever known. She stood in front of Marco's food truck, the one that had been parked on the corner of 5th and Bloom for the past 3 months, and she felt something inside her crack wide open. It had started the night before, when her younger brother, Diego, had come home with his eyes red and his hands shaking, telling her that someone had cheated him out of his last $50, a food truck vendor, who had taken his money and then driven away without giving him anything, leaving him hungry and humiliated on the street. Diego was 19, soft-hearted, easily trusting, and Layla had spent her whole life protecting him from a world that never seemed to care. She hadn't slept all night. She had driven to the spot where Diego said it happened, and she had found the truck, Marco's kitchen, painted in warm orange and yellow, with little chili pepper drawings along the side, and something inside her exploded. She didn't plan it. She didn't think. She grabbed the metal signboard propped against the side of the truck and she swung it, hard, knocking over the condiment stand, sending bottles of hot sauce and napkin holders crashing to the pavement. She kicked the portable generator. She screamed. She told the stunned man standing behind the counter exactly what kind of person she thought he was, her voice breaking with a fury built from years of watching people take advantage of her brother. The man, dark-eyed, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded apron, didn't scream back. He didn't call the police. He just stood there, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. And when her rage finally ran out of fuel and she stood there breathless among the scattered mess she had made, he quietly said, "Are you talking about the kid with the green backpack?" "Diego?" Layla froze. The sound of her brother's name in this stranger's mouth hit her like cold water. She stared at him, chest heaving, and managed to say, "What do you know about my brother?" Marco, because that was indeed his name. Marco Reyes slowly reached under the counter and pulled out a small notebook. He opened it to a page and turned it toward her. There was Diego's name, written in careful handwriting, next to a date from 2 weeks ago. "Your brother didn't lose his money to me," Marco said, his voice steady and unhurried. "He came here 2 weeks ago, paid for a meal, sat down over there on that bench, and while he was eating, he started shaking. I didn't know what was happening at first. I thought he was cold, but then I saw his eyes roll back." Layla's hand flew to her mouth. "He had a seizure," Marco continued, "right there on the sidewalk. I came out from behind the truck and I stayed with him the whole time. I put my jacket under his head. I called the ambulance. I rode with him to the hospital because he was alone, and I didn't want him to wake up in a strange place with nobody there." The notebook, she now understood, wasn't a ledger of transactions. It was a record of the people Marco had helped. Names, dates, small notes. Diego's name was circled. Beneath it, Marco had written, "Seizure, alone, okay in the end." Layla felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She thought of Diego coming home from the hospital that day, quiet and shaken, telling her he had blacked out somewhere and woken up in the emergency room. He had never mentioned the man who had stayed beside him. He had never mentioned a name. Her voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. "He never told me someone was there with him." Marco gave a small shrug, the kind that meant it didn't matter to him whether anyone knew. He was scared. "I just didn't want him to be alone." Layla looked at the damage she had done, the scattered bottles, the toppled stand, the dented signboard, and felt a shame, so deep it seemed to reach all the way down to her bones. She knelt down and began picking up the mess with her bare hands, and Marco came around from behind the counter and crouched beside her, helping her without a single word of blame. They cleaned it up together, side by side on the pavement. In the golden light of the morning, by the time everything was back in its place, Layla was crying. Not from rage this time, but from the particular grief of realizing how close she had come to destroying something that deserved only gratitude. Marco poured her a cup of coffee and set it on the counter without being asked. She wrapped both hands around it and looked at him. This quiet man who had stayed beside her brother when she wasn't there, who had given him his jacket and his time and his presence. who had asked for nothing and said nothing and simply done what a good person does. "Thank you," she said. It felt too small. It was the only thing she had. Marco nodded and smiled, and turned back to his grill. And the morning went on around them, ordinary and unhurried, the way mornings do after something quietly extraordinary has taken place. If this story moves something in you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to. Be reminded that kindness still exists in unexpected places. And don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, where every story is a reminder that the world is fuller of good people than we sometimes believe.